7 Budgeting Mistakes You Need to Avoid. My experience taught me that budgeting is an art as well as a science and that there are many ways you can fail at it. Here are the top 7 budgeting mistakes you may be making and what to do differently. 1. You don't budget. As the well-known quote says, failing to plan is like planning to fail. A budget is nothing more nor less than a financial plan for the coming years. If you don't budget, why would you expect to achieve anything financially? A good budget aligns with your priorities and goals and makes them concrete. Establish your financial priorities and goals. These could include retirement or financial independence, if you don't want to plan on ever not working, buying a home, buying or replacing a car, saving for your kids' college education, setting up an emergency fund, etc. Thinking about each goal, ask yourself where you want to be in a year, 5 years, 10 years, etc. Figure out how much money you need to set aside for each goal given its size and how long until you want to reach it. These amounts are the pay yourself first portion of your budget. Note how much you're spending on things you can't easily change, like mortgage or rent, car loan payments, etc., and add those to the budget. Figure out how much you're spending on discretionary categories. Then, see how well they align with your goals and priorities. Finally, trim or eliminate those discretionary categories that don't align with your priorities, and add to the budget those that do. 2. You don't track your expenses. If you don't know where your money goes, you can't stop it from leaking and getting frittered down to nothing. Tracking lets you compare your actual spending with your budgeted priorities. That, in turn, lets you figure out what you need to change, and it might be recognizing that something you didn't realize was a priority really is one. Figure out what tracking method is most comfortable and efficient for you. It could be using Quicken and Excel spreadsheets like mine, a smartphone app such as Mint, or old school like putting set amounts of cash in budget category specific envelopes. Start recording how much you spend in each category. Periodically review your actual spending and compare it to your budget. Do this monthly, quarterly, and annually. Where you see yourself consistently overspending your budget, consider if this is a hidden priority that you should add to your budget or increase. If it isn't, ask yourself why you're wasting money on something that pushes you further away from achieving your goals. You may need to break bad habits or create new and better ones. 3. You don't save for emergencies. A major medical problem, a major auto repair, losing your job without an emergency fund. It's not a question of if, but when, something unexpected like that will happen and knock your finances for a loop. As a result, you may be forced to borrow on your credit cards, with all the impacts and costs of high credit card debt. Figure out how many months of expenses you should set aside. Create an emergency situation budget by figuring out what expenses you can't reduce or avoid altogether. Multiply the results of the 2 steps. That's how much you need to set aside for emergencies. Prioritize reaching this target relative to other goals and priorities. Once you reach it, you can reallocate those dollars that went into your emergency fund toward the goals you de-emphasized until then. Note that once you have enough cash set aside for 2 to 3 months of expenses in a high-interest checking account, you can consider putting the remainder of your emergency fund into a Roth IRA that's been open for at least 5 years. You can withdraw Roth IRA contributions tax and penalty-free, once the account is 5 years old. This will let you start funding your retirement earlier, so it can grow more by the time you need it. 4. You don't invest for the future. Unless you die before it happens, you will reach a point where you're unable and/or unwilling to keep working for the money you need to survive. To avoid financial ruin when that happens, you must set aside money for that future self. Further, you must invest this money so the returns, compounded over years and decades, greatly reduce how much you need to contribute to your retirement accounts. If you don't invest a large enough fraction of your income, early enough, and long enough, you will spend your retirement in poverty. Develop a retirement budget. If you have no idea how much that should be, one way to estimate it is to start with your adjusted gross income, or AGI, as reported to the IRS, and subtract from it amounts you set aside for the future. Figure out how much you'll have coming in from Social Security or other sources. If you're married, don't forget to add your spouse's retirement or spousal benefits, whichever is higher. Then, reduce those benefits by 23% to account for the looming exhaustion of the Social Security Trust Fund. Estimate how much you need to amass to cover the difference between your retirement budget and your expected Social Security benefits. A good way to do this is to multiply the annual calculated shortfall by 33.3. The 4% rule would have you multiply by 25, but recent research indicates that a 3% rule is more appropriate given lower projected stock market returns. Figure out how much you need to invest monthly to reach that portfolio. 5. You're so frugal that life in the present is unsustainable. If you have zero fun now, it's almost guaranteed that you'll grow tired of it and fall off the wagon. This is the same problem as going on a too extreme diet. Find free or inexpensive things you enjoy doing. This could include potluck dinners with friends, rotating between homes, reading books from the library for free, visiting free museums, hiking or running, drawing, writing, or doing any of a host of low-cost crafts. Budget at least some money for things you love doing, saving up for them for a year or more if needed. For example, if you set aside $25 per month, in a year you'd have $300 for a long weekend at a nearby bed and breakfast, or whatever else you'd value enough to spend that money on. As you reach a financial goal, rather than diverting all the money that went toward that goal to the next one, reward your present self by diverting some of that money to doing fun stuff. Just don't overdo it. 6. You spend money you don't have on things you don't need. The 3-word phrase that will doom your finances: I deserve it. If something doesn't align with your goals and priorities and costs a